My name's Richard Briggs and I work for Transport for Wales, and I'm going to talk to you about the South Wales Metro and the transformation of the Core Valley lines. I'm going to go through an introduction to the Core Valley lines. I'll talk about who Transport for Wales are, because you may not be familiar with that, the procurement process that we've just been through, do an introduction to South Wales Metro, and then go through some of the timescales, the infrastructure interfaces, and also talk briefly on vertical integration. So actually I want to start by looking backwards. Cardiff in the 1900s, we had trams and trains. Trams running down Bute Street to Cardiff Bay, and we had trains going down to Cardiff Bay and delivering coal to the world. The railway network in the past looked quite different. We'd got valley lines going up from competing railway companies, delivering coal from the valleys down to Cardiff docks and beyond. That network today, however, looks somewhat different. There's only one colliery left at Cumbergoid, and we're left with a commuter railway network which is largely single track and services either every half hour or an hour. But rail travel in the Principality is growing, and in the Cardiff region it's expected to grow by 68% by 2023 and up to 144% by 2043. Some of you may have heard as well recently that Transport for Wales have taken over the rail services this week. So for the next 15 years we'll be responsible for rail services. And what I'd like to do, if the technology works, is to play our launch video.
In the heat of the Industrial Revolution, Wales was at the heart of global innovation. In 1804, a groundbreaking steam engine designed by Richard Trevithick powered the world's first ever railway journey along 9 miles of track from Penydarren Ironworks to the Merthyr-Cardiff Canal at Abercynon. 3 years later, the Oystermouth Railway carried the world's first fare-paying passengers between Swansea and the Mimbles. Today, in 2018, we embrace a new era of innovation and the beginning of an exciting new journey for Wales. This will be a journey of transformation for our transport network. Transport for Wales was set up by the Welsh Government as a not-for-profit company. Its role is to deliver a new vision for transport, with the people and places of Wales at the heart of its mission. The task? To keep Wales moving, by providing customer-focused services and guiding our investment in infrastructure and delivering expert advice. We listened to the people of Wales and set a bold new ambition for our transport network. We've started by challenging industry to work with us to reimagine our rail network. It's time to deliver a new generation of rail services that will unlock real opportunities for everyone. Following the most comprehensive public procurement process ever undertaken in Wales, we've appointed an industry-leading partnership, Keolis Amy, to build and deliver the service. This international joint venture will bring a wealth of global experience to our railways, a revitalised network that will see new services and rolling stock, innovative solutions, and a massive programme of station investment. The South Wales Metro is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a modern, high-quality, multimodal network with high-frequency services on brand-new rolling stock, and the ability to extend into new and existing communities. This new turn-up-and-go service, providing at least 4 trains an hour across a fully integrated network, will be fully operational by 2023. TfW's partnership with Keolis Amy will go much further than simply providing new services. A new UK headquarters in Wales, a new industry consulting office, as well as apprenticeship schemes and a commitment to manufacturing in Wales that will bring new jobs, experience and opportunities to our nation. We'll also focus on improving integration between different modes of transport. Joined-up services, simplified ticketing and reliable information will underpin a modern, efficient network, ensuring that our public transport and active travel networks complement each other. So much more than getting from A to B, transport is about connecting people and communities, enabling sustainable development and delivering prosperity for all. This requires a transport network that all passengers will be proud of. This requires a journey of transformation. That new journey begins today. Rhwydwaith trafnidiaeth gall Cymru gyfan fod yn falch ohoni. I bobl, I gymuned, I Gymru. Trawsnewid Trafnidiaeth. For people, for places, for Wales. Transforming transport.
So hopefully you enjoyed that brief interlude, and it set out the vision for what we'd like to do in the Principality and beyond. So who are Transport for Wales? Well, we provide technical advice and expertise to help the Welsh Government to develop its transport policy. We're an expert transport delivery organisation for the Welsh Government, and everything we do supports Welsh Government policies. So I want to touch briefly on the procurement process that we've been through. I think many of you will be familiar with the traditional franchising approach with the Department for Transport, and you have a franchise agreement with a train operating company with vehicles leased from rolling stock companies, track access agreements with Network Rail, and stations and depots leased from Network Rail as well. For the Wales and Borders procurement, the Welsh Government looked at devolving powers from the Secretary of State to the Welsh Ministers, and that was back in 2014. 4 years of research followed that to look at alternatives to UK rail franchising and also infrastructure delivery. And that ended up with a competitive dialogue process being devised for the procurement. The aim was to focus on quality and innovation, and we looked at outcome-based approach based upon the policies of the Welsh Government. We looked at new service requirements and trying to exceed those in the current, or the franchise that's just finished. We wanted to avoid unsustainable bids, so we did that by applying a budget envelope, asking bidders to work with that, but we also incentivised them to go further, to look at further investment. And we ended up with 4 credible global railway consortiums bidding for the scheme, and they helped to refine our requirements and brought innovative ideas through that procurement process. So what was the vision? Well, it was, as the video said, to put passengers at the heart of all rail travel, to focus on improving seat capacity, journey times and service frequency. We wanted to ensure fair, affordable fares and quality clean trains. And we wanted to procure a partner for a groundbreaking transformation of transport across Wales and the border regions. And a key part of that was the £738 million transformation of the core valley lines into South Wales Metro by 2024. So what have we procured? Well, we've got an operator and a development partner. As the video said, Keolis Amy have been appointed, and from Sunday, they're now responsible for running rail services as Transport for Wales for the next 15 years. Alongside that, they're our development partner. So they're responsible for, it's like a managing agent role for designing the transformation of the core valley lines and helping us to implement the vision. Alongside that, we have something called the STRIDE framework, which is a framework of infrastructure delivery partners. It's a group of civil and systems engineering contractors with the expertise to help us and Keolis Amy deliver that transformation of the rail network. As part of that, there'll be opportunities for SMEs throughout Wales via the Sell to Wales portal. So I'll now go on to talk a little bit more about what South Wales Metro is. I suppose the grander vision is it's more than just a rail-based transit. It's not just heavy rail or light rail, but ultimately we'll be looking at buses, bus rapid transit, and linking journeys end to end. So we'll be looking at interchanges and active travel, and the aim will to be have that all under a metro concept. The initial changes on the rail network. So last week we had Arriva Trains Wales running the services under a rail franchise, and we had Network Rail responsible for the infrastructure. This week, we have Transport for Wales responsible for the rail services, and Network Rail still responsible for the infrastructure. The more interesting element is in autumn 2019, and the aim is to take that area that's shaded in red and to transfer that from Network Rail ownership into Welsh Government ownership. So Transport for Wales and Keolis Amy will be responsible for the maintenance and operation of rail services. It will exclude the Cardiff central area, but it will be that area indicated on the plan. And by 2024, the aim is that Transport for Wales will be responsible for the whole piece and will have transformed the core valley lines into the South Wales Metro. So what does that mean? Which means we're taking what is essentially at the heads of the valleys a branch line network and turning it into a rapid transit system. So if you look at the plan on the left shows the current service frequencies, and on the right we've got the new frequencies. So from the heads of the valleys we're doubling the number of train services, and what that means is for places like Pontypridd they're going to see an increase in the number of services per hour from 6 to 12. So it's turning into a real rapid transit turn up and go style service. This gives you a bit of more detailed breakdown by route of what's happening. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I've highlighted a few key areas. By 2023, you'll see the number of trains per hour is increasing. Journey times are reducing through infrastructure interventions that we'll be making. And there's a significant increase in capacity, both through those infrastructure interventions and through new rolling stock. So what are the changes? This is a very quick summary. In terms of track, we've got 15 sites where track is being redoubled. I don't know if it'll come out on the visual, but the areas shaded in green on the network plan. Queen Street Station will be remodelled, and we've got numerous line speed improvements, plus an extension across a street at Hemingway Road to a new station at Cardiff Bay. We've got something called smart electrification, and I'll touch on more on that later. We have vehicle maintenance facilities, so we have a new depot for the new rolling stock coming in, but we're also improving existing stabling and depot sites. We've got station improvements across the network with new stations, new platforms for the areas that are being twin tracked, and work at all stations to improve facilities. We have 10 new station footbridges, 3 new road over rail bridges, and part of the reason for that is to reduce risk at level crossings. So this is the initial South Wales Metro network plan. So the lines that are shown in red is the Rumney route going cross city through Cardiff onto the Penarth, Barry and Bridgend. And these will be run by something called tri-mode rolling stock. So I'll touch upon that later. The lines in blue will be run by Tram train vehicles. Rob did an excellent presentation this morning, and we'll be taking similar vehicles, a high floor version, and using that on the Treherbert, Aberdare, Merthyr to Cardiff Bay lines. And then the remainder of what is termed the South Wales Metro area will be delivered via diesel rolling stock, which are the areas shown in green. Timelines for the project. We've got to complete the transformation before 2025. I'm not going to go through all the dates in this programme, but key ones to pick out for the Metro are the Treherbert, Aberdare, Merthyr tram trains to be introduced during 2022, and for the tri-mode vehicles to come in during 2023. So I'll talk a little bit more now about the rolling stock. So those familiar with Arriva Trains Wales will know that a lot of the stock is sprinters or pacers, much derided in the Cardiff region, the pacers. These are going to be replaced. We're bringing in 36 tram train vehicles from Stadler. These are high floor vehicles to suit the legacy element of the core valley lines, the number of stations that are on our network. Their main power source will be 25 kV overhead line, but they'll also operate using batteries, and they're capable of on-street line of sight operation. They're 40 metres long, they've got capacity for 257 people, a maximum speed of 100 kilometres an hour. They've got enhanced crash worthiness, and they can do curves down to 25 metres, which means that we can take those vehicles on street. That's just a quick visual of potential interior for the tram train vehicle. So the tri-mode vehicles, these are heavy rail rolling stock, 24 number vehicles coming in from Stadler. The vehicles will share tracks with freight on the Rumney line, and their main power source will be 25 kV overhead line, again with batteries, but also an auxiliary diesel engine to drive the electric motors on the routes through Barry and Bridgend. But these units will allow, along with the tram train vehicles, 100% electric operation on the core valley lines, and zero carbon was a key requirement of the Welsh Government. The vehicles for the Rumney and Corryton line do vary in length, and you can see there they're slightly different capacities because of that, but the vehicles have a maximum speed of 75 miles per hour. Something we're particularly proud of is level boarding on the core valley lines. We wanted to achieve level light rail style platform gaps, And on the heavy rail vehicles, this will be achieved by having these steps that will come out and meet the platform edge. So we provide accessibility from platform onto the vehicles for wheelchair users, people with push chairs, etc. We've got new vehicles coming in as well across Wales, and half of them will be assembled at a new plant being built by CAF in Newport, Wales. So depots, we've got an ageing depot estate. This is Cardiff Canton, where the diesel fleet is maintained at the moment. For the tram train vehicles, we're going to have a new depot built at Taffs Well. So the area highlighted in red here is currently due for demolition, and that will become our new tram train depot. We've got Taffs Well station down here, and we'll have a new connection into that depot site. We'll be doing upgrades to existing stabling sites, and at Cardiff Canton, which is the basis for the diesel fleet, we'll be making some upgrades. So we've got, in this area, we'll be having a new shed built that will allow us to get access to the top of the tri-mode vehicles to maintain the pantographs, etc. And in the stabling to the south of the site, there will be electrified roads to recharge the batteries at night on the vehicles. So I'll go through now some of the infrastructure interfaces. We've got a number of stations along the route, all of different styles. So in the top corner, we've got Cardiff Central, we've got intercity services, freight, a number of train operators running through that site. We've then got another interchange station at Cardiff Queen Street, but this will be purely Transport for Wales services, but again, a really busy station on our network. Then as we go up the valleys, we get a couple of types of stations. So this example is Pontypridd. So a regional town, very busy. But as we go up the valleys, we end up with these rural stops and very basic station facilities. So we've got a huge amount of investment to go into new stations. We've got 3 new stations at Gabalfa, Loudon Square and Croyce Road. And we're relocating stations at Cardiff Bay and Treforest Estate to make them more accessible. We've got upgrades to 13 new platforms, partly due to the twin tracking I mentioned earlier, 10 new station footbridges, and at 6 of the stations we'll be looking at improving the access from street to platform level, and all stations across the network will be improved. It's not strictly to do with CVL, but just a point to note that we'll be investing in new interchanges as well. So this is a visual for the proposed bus interchange at Cardiff Central, so you should be able to come off the metro and then carry on your onward journey via bus. Transport for Wales are rolling out branding across the network, and the aim is for that to be easy to understand and provide integrated transport signage across our network. And that includes this station as well. Surprisingly enough, I'm not going to attempt to name this one. But an interesting story I heard was actually all signs in Wales are meant to be bilingual. So actually that sign doesn't have an English translation. So if anyone wants to suggest what the translation would be, come and speak to me afterwards. As mentioned earlier, we've got to do lots of twin tracking to get the capacity up the valleys. So we've got a number of old Victorian structures that will need to be reintroducing tracks across. So we need to look at the condition of those structures. We also need to de-veg along the route. So there's a lot of Japanese nutweed that's up the valley, so that's another constraint that we'll need to deal with. Said earlier, we're looking at electrifying the core valley lines, and if I go through maybe some of the constraints that we've got on the network, we have a number of overbridges, Victorian structures. Obviously, for 25 kV electrification, they pose a challenge. I've borrowed some slides from Network Rail for what's been happening on the Great Western Main Line, just to show the kind of disruption that occurs when you need to lift up bridges, you potentially cut off communities, you need to deal with utilities in the structure, your impact on stakeholders. You also need to think about station canopies, electrification clearances and parapets need to be raised to get adequate clearances. We also have Caerphilly Tunnel, which you can see from the image is fairly tight. We've done exercise in the past to look at the feasibility of electrifying the tunnels, and you can see the pantograph horns do interface there with the tunnel lining. We also have drainage issues within the tunnel, and the image in the very bottom corner is actually corrugated sheeting that directs water that floods through the roof of the tunnel and down the sides. So we had to look at something different, and this is what's been termed smart electrification. There's two solutions that we're looking at using. The first is a permanently earthed section, and with this we have overhead wire, but we have a section of wire that is neutral, so it's not a live wire. That allows us to reduce the clearances to structures, to canopies at stations. How that operates, the vehicle would be approaching under wires, and we have what's called a PES beacon that sends a note to the train, and it tells the vehicle to start operating on batteries. It then proceeds through this section using the battery propulsion, and then will automatically detect when it goes back onto a part of the route that's electrified. The other solution that's been used is catenary free. So in this area, we actually have no catenary at all. So this is a solution that would be used for Caerphilly Tunnel. So in this arrangement, we have a contact wire at nominal height. It then lifts up above the normal operating range. At the end of the constraint, we have it coming down to an operating height and continuing. How this would operate, the vehicle again approaches, a beacon sends a message to the vehicle, and this time the pantograph drops, and the vehicle proceeds through here working on batteries. At the end of this section, there's another beacon that then tells the vehicle that it's back under the overhead wire, and the pantograph will go back up onto the wire, and it'll take electric propulsion again and start recharging the batteries. We estimate that this has avoided the need to lift 55 bridges across the network. So, signalling. At the moment, Network Rail has its Wales Regional Operations Centre, commonly known as the ROC. But as we go up the valleys, we end up with this wonderful single-line token system. So there's a bit of a challenge for us. Those of you may be familiar with light rail operation. The intention is to move towards an integrated control centre, and the plan is to locate that at Taftswell with the new tram train facility. So the network, or the legacy network, is intended to operate under multiple aspect signalling, colour light signalling, and the existing signal interlocking systems will be retained at the Rock, Radda and at Abercynon. However, the signalling control systems at those locations will be migrated into the new CVL-ICC. We've got life extension works across the system, including the replacement of obviously the single line token systems. We've got remodelling at Queen Street to help reduce overlaps and also to improve platform reoccupation times. And we'll also need to commission all the new areas of twin tracking that we're doing on the network, so passing loop signals and also the immunisation works. Mentioned level crossings earlier. You can see from this plan that there's a number of them across our network. We're increasing the frequency of services, we're electrifying the railway, so there's a change in the risk profile, which means we affect a number of private user work crossings and public footpath crossings. So in some areas, we'll need to take an approach maybe similar to this to close the crossing and to put new bridges in or access routes to mitigate that risk. I mentioned earlier we're looking at taking the metro on straight down to a new station at Cardiff Bay. So this is a visual that was produced of this station near the Millennium Centre and the Welsh Assembly Government buildings. The thing to notice on this image is that there are no overhead wires down at the terminus because we're in an on-street environment. So the vehicle will be operating on batteries. Now I put this image up because this is one of my projects in a previous life was to introduce battery-powered trams to the West Midlands. Now these are operating now on Midland Metro, and the reason for putting this up is that during the procurement process we really did challenge bidders about innovation, and what we wanted, we always said that we wanted you to be at the leading edge, but we don't want to be at the bleeding edge. So give us some technology that we know works. Doesn't necessarily need to be in the UK, but we do want innovation brought to the system. And on the right-hand side, you can see that actually there are opportunities to put in recharging points as the network expands. If we go on street to different areas, that those opportunities exist as well. So I thought I'd touch briefly on line-of-sight operation. Not everyone may be familiar with that. So down from Cardiff Queen Street to Cardiff Bay, we'll be operating under tramway principles and line-of-sight operation. So with this, a driver should be able to stop before a reasonably visible stationary obstruction ahead of the intended speed of operation. There's a variety of things that a driver needs to consider. I won't go through all of these, but clearly the speed of the vehicle, its braking capability, the conditions as well. Is it dark? Is it foggy? All have an impact to play. We do have signals on the tramway, but they're used with white lights. So there's an image on the right-hand side from the second city crossing in Manchester. And I've put some images at the bottom just to show that a series of white lights horizontally means don't proceed. If we get a vertical bar, it gives the driver a proceed through the junction. And there's also other symbols to proceed left or right at point work. And the cluster is very similar to an amber on traffic lights. It tells the driver that the lights are going to change, and the driver has to make a decision of whether to stop or to proceed through the junction. We have diamond-shaped signs as well that give information to the drivers. It could be a speed limit or instructions for drivers along the route. To control movement, we have points position indicators. It tells the driver where the points are set. And we have loops that feed information back to the control centre, so we know where vehicles are on the network. And when we do go across signalised junctions, we have loops that put in an advanced detector, puts a call into the junction, prepares the junction for the tram approaching. If the vehicle gets delayed for whatever reason, we have a stop line detector. The driver can put in another command to the junction. And once you're through the junction, there's the cancel detector, which returns that road junction to normal operation. So line of sight operation is quite useful for the future as we do go on street and down to the bay. New at-grade crossings can be opened up across the route without the need for visually intrusive ramp footbridges. We've got opportunities also to remove some of the historical structures. So this example on the left-hand side is from the Bay line. It's not a very nice walking route, a large series of steps, quite dark. In the future, there's the potential that you go to something where you could actually just cross the tracks at grade, passive surveillance, and a much nicer environment. The other advantage of that is that it reduces the segregation of a rail corridor. We don't necessarily need to barrier the route, and we can open up new pathways across that corridor. So finally, I wanted to touch briefly on the vertical integration aspects of the scheme. We need to do an asset transfer to take the railway from Network Rail ownership to Welsh Government ownership. To do that, we need to agree connection agreements with Network Rail, and we've got to decide where the maintenance boundaries are. And these will vary by asset class. The location for where the track boundary is compared to the signalling to the electrification will vary depending on what the optimum location is. We've got this discovery phase that's ongoing until autumn of next year, and this allows the ODP, Keolis Amy, to investigate, survey and refine its understanding of the condition of the assets, and the Transport for Wales team will be working alongside them. We can't review everything in that timescale, so it will be a risk-based approach that we use. So we'll be looking at what the key risks are, elements such as the Victorian structures. And the principles of the transfer are going to be enshrined in a transfer framework agreement which is being negotiated at the moment. So subject to that asset transferring, we're then into the infrastructure maintenance phase of the project. So the ODP will be responsible for operations and maintenance, creating that vertically integrated railway. Transport for Wales and Keolis Amy have appointed an independent reporter, and that's quite a key role, because renewals will be identified by the ODP, but they will be funded by Welsh Government. So the renewals will be subject to review by the Transport for Wales team, but the independent reporter will also be providing a review in terms of those renewals. But ultimately, for the big items on the network, Welsh Government bears the risk of significant infrastructure failures if they were to happen. So I wanted to end by looking towards the future now. So this is Cardiff in 2024. We have tram train vehicles running down to a new station at Cardiff Bay. We've got brand new trains across the network, tram train vehicles, tri-mode vehicles. And the hope is now that the Cardiff Capital Region will come forward with additional funding to reopen some of the many disused rail routes, but also new on-street extensions with new developments happening in the city. So we're really pleased with the vision that's been created for Wales, and we're really proud a couple of weeks ago to pick up our first award at the Global Light Rail Awards for Vision of the Year. So we've set the vision now. Our task is to make sure we deliver upon that vision. So with that, I will thank you for listening.